Hello, I'm Dr. Dobie Moser, and I'm back for the second video in our series on mental health and depression. I am a parishioner here at Saint Ambrose, and it's my privilege to assist you in any way we can as we look at that very real challenge in our lives of mental health, and specifically what that has meant and looked like, not just ordinarily, but in the last 18 months in a pandemic, with all of the isolation that has affected people of every age. So it's one of the reasons we're doing this series, to assist anybody in our parish. You're not alone. We'll walk with you. It is hard, but we can help you get there. One of the things we talked about in the first video was that idea of a mental health first aid kit. What would be in that kit? What do you need to know and be able to do in situations, whether it's a smaller scale mental health situation or a mental health crisis and anything in between. One of the things that many of us as parents have to deal with is what happens when a child, a relative that is under our care, has a serious mental health challenge, and how do we help them, and what does that look like? And one really important idea I want to share with you is it's very easy to think, how did this happen to me? Why is this happening to my family? That's a very natural thing to feel and think. And there's no judgment of that, and there's no blame of that. However, that's not a good place to stay. That is a place that we can be initially because we're in shock. It's something new that we did not expect. But we have the opportunity in that to change our expectations. Notice I didn't say lower our expectations. I said change our expectations away from what we thought it was going to be to what it is. And I think what I have learned about parenting is our children are not always the gift expected, but they are the gift given. And if they have physical challenges, if they have mental health challenges at any degree or level, our role is to love them with that challenge, to help them love themselves with that challenge, to help them know that God sees them as precious and beautiful in God's eyes, just like He does every person on this earth. You know, I often remind folks, who is outside of God's love and mercy? And we know the answer to that. Nobody. Nobody. God doesn't say those people about anyone. So when we think of that in the context of mental health, any person with any mental illness, whether it is less severe or more serious, our response as a parish community and as Christians, that person is made in God's image and likeness, and we are to love that person as we learn how to best do that. And it does take learning as best we can. A few very specific tools related to that toolkit, or that mental health first aid kit. One would be, just remember the 3 F's: feel, felt, and found. And that's kind of an easy way to remember those 3 F's. It would be, as you're listening and you're working with somebody who's dealing with a mental health struggle, it sounds like you feel. What are you feeling? Well, I sense you're feeling. And it's an opportunity and a way to help people know that on a feeling level, you care about what they're feeling. And that gift of empathy is a tremendous gift to help them know they're not alone. And their feelings, whether they're difficult, challenging, whatever they are, that's okay. That we heard them and we recognize it. And then the felt part would be, it sounds, or I hear that you felt. It's when they took actions and made decisions based on those feelings, we're helping them connect those dots. You felt that and did, or when you felt that, you, and they may fill in the blank. But the point would be, it's acknowledging what they feel, what they felt, and then the found part would be allowing us and them. It could be, what did you find in that experience? Or I have found when I felt that. So it's that part of, okay, there can be a beginning and a middle and moving toward an end, even with our feelings. They're not finite. They're also not ever expanding. They have phases and stages, and that's a good thing. And that language can help them articulate and name what's going on inside them. But they are the ones doing the articulating. We're just giving them a little framework with feel, felt, and found. The other piece I would encourage all of us, and you might want to write this down, it's the idea reflection is what turns experience into insight and insight into compassionate action. So taking that time to simply reflect and think of what is happening, what has happened, how I interpreted that experience, how you interpreted that experience, taking the time to reflect and name that, there are rich insights waiting for us in there if we have the integrity and honesty to go there. Because it means I have to look and say, what was my response? What did I do that was helpful? What did I do that was not helpful? So just by taking that idea of reflection on our experience leads to insight, and then that insight leads to compassionate action. Next time I will. Now that I know that about the situation, the family member that I love, myself, now that I know that, the compassionate action, I can, I will. It leads to specific action, but it all begins back with reflection. So I just encourage that formula of reflection is what turns experience into insight and insight into compassionate action. So another tool for your toolkit, this one is really counterintuitive, hard to do, good to practice with somebody who you know and love and they trust you. It's called LEE, Low Emotional Effect. And what that means is when a person is going through a mental health situation, especially one that is bordering on out of control or intense emotions that they're expressing, and often when they do that, they're out of control emotionally. And again, the temptation to judge them as a bad person, how dare they? But LEE says, look, low emotional effect. You do not take their emotion and escalate it 1 or 2 notches, because now we have 2 people out of control. The goal in that is literally to do what our instinct is like, oh yeah, and I want to go after you. No, to speak in a softer voice, to show less emotion, and by de-escalating the emotion, I'm providing more emotional space for the other person. And literally, it can help them take that space and begin to de-escalate their emotions. So the counterintuitive part, by nature, it's like, you came at me hard, it's just right there. And yet, LEE says low emotional effect de-escalates the situation, which is a gift, frankly, to everyone involved in the situation. So I want to give you a few other specific tools for your toolkit. One would be, I guess it's letter day. Today would be, another one would be 3 R's, and it would be rules, routines, and rituals that work for you. So one of the things when we have part of our lives that do not feel like they're under control, or that we really struggle with in the area of mental health, having some basic rules and routines and rituals is a way to know our place and find our way. Now, when it gets more serious with mental illness and depression specifically, a lot of times those persons are not able to follow those rules, routines, and rituals, which is not a judgment. It's a sign of the illness to say, okay, this is now more serious. But the idea of those rules, routines, and rituals, it allows us to know our way. Say, okay, the world's okay. This is what I do. I'm doing it. And again, any of these things could be carried to an extreme that's unhealthy. But in a healthy way, that is a good tool to have in the toolkit. And you might want to ask yourself, what is that? What are those rules, routines, and rituals in your life, in the lives of those you love that struggle with mental illness, that can help them have their bearings, their markers, so that they can find their way? Another acronym, you may have heard this, it's used in different settings, it's the acronym of HALT, H-A-L-T. And HALT stands for hungry, angry, lonely, tired. None of us are at our best when we have 2 of those. Once it gets beyond 3 or 4, it's like, stay away. So the idea would be when we're feeling hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or any combination thereof, that's not a good time to make a decision. That's not a time to determine to go in a certain life direction. There's a very high chance you will make poor decisions. I would make poor decisions when I'm in that space. So that idea would be when we're in that, literally, there's a simple remedy, and it would be ask for help. And give that family member, that loved one that supports you, talk about it up front. Give them permission to say, you can tell me when you see me in that space. Because frankly, a lot of times when we're in that space, we cannot see it in ourselves, but others can surely see it in us. Another piece I'd like to throw out as we think about this is, and I know we know this, but it's a good reminder, and it connects very much with our understanding of what it means to be a Christian. And it would be this, that we do not get to choose our sufferings in this world. They choose us. And there's no need to lament the sufferings that come our way. They're real. We can feel them, and we can feel them deeply. But the point would be, how do we take that suffering? And actually, I know it's difficult, but lean into that suffering and find a way to grow within it, find a way to love within it, find a way to connect our suffering with the suffering of Jesus. Jesus surely knew suffering. The Holy Family surely knew suffering. And yet, that suffering led to a redemption that has saved the world. So that idea of how can we accept that our sufferings come to us, we don't choose them, but I have some good news. We do have a choice as to how we respond to the suffering. It's hard. It is absolutely hard work. It takes courage. It takes a support network. It takes people who love and walk with us. But we have a choice. We don't have a choice about what the suffering is, but we do have a choice regarding how we might respond. And in that light, I would just throw out another idea, and it would be the idea of, and I learned this actually from a woman dealing with very challenging cancer. And she said something that puzzled me. She said, I get to go to my chemo treatments on Thursday. And I said, did you just say get to go? Because usually when people talk about chemo treatments, that's not the language I hear. She said, yes, I get to get treatment that can help make me well. I get to go to a place where the people are there to help me and support me. And not everyone has that privilege. I am so thankful that I get to do that. And her story really changed my thinking of, and I would just encourage you to consider this. When you go through a day, just change one word in a lot of our sentences from what we have to do to what we get to do. And that distinction can literally make a big change. So it's that idea of, I get to do this, I get to work through suffering. I wouldn't choose it, but I get to work through it, and I get to choose what my response might be. Just that simple little response. I want to finish with a story and this idea of Saint Ambrose walking with you and supporting you in the area of mental illness and depression. I learned this in an unusual way a long time ago. My 21-year-old brother-in-law, Greg, died in a car accident in a small town outside of Pittsburgh. And when our families all got together from all the places where we lived, in the funeral home, I was standing beside Greg's parents, and an older couple came up. And when they spoke to Greg's parents, and many people came through and talked about how they knew Greg from many different activities and experiences and from our parish. But this couple came up, and their first thing they said really caught my attention. They said, we never met your son, Greg. And I thought, I wonder why they're here. And they said, but we lost a son in his early 20s in a car accident. We know what it's like to not know how you're going to go on. We know what it's like to wonder when that sick feeling, is it ever going to go away? And they said, we're here to let you know that it will. And you're not alone. And we're here to support you. And I just remember being so moved. And my in-laws embraced, they embraced, and that feeling of walking with, I think that's the moment that I understood it in a way that changed many things in my own life. We are here to walk with you, and to our parish community, we're here to walk with those in need. Because any given day, that person in need could and in fact is us. And we can be Christ to one another in how we care for those with mental health challenges and depression. Thank you, God bless you, and peace be with you.